08700 40 50 60. That's the phone number. That'll get you through. There's one line available for you now, if you use it rather rapidly. Roger in Bristol, you're on Talk Sport. Hello, Roger.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Morning. I'd like to really put forward the thing about nature or nurture.
Yep.
Which would you go for?
It depends on what it is. I think there are certain things where you are a product of the environment, but presumably there are other aspects of your personality and your character or your physical makeup that are actually in the genes, that are indeed nature.
Well, I've been thinking a lot about this, and today I saw a documentary, I think Channel 4, about genetics, and it showed sort of more or less different sort of type skin people can are prone to cancers and I believe, in my opinion, I believe that we're only in 10% of control of our own emotions and our own actions, and all the rest is nature.
So, well, the one that puzzles me, Roger, is evil.
Well, that would be nature.
Would it?
No, I believe so. Because if you have a look at everything in life, it is controlled by our nature, not by our upbringing. What our upbringing is a kind of, I suppose, training to be guided within a kind of criterion of nature. In other words, we're trained to go to war, we're trained for peace, but it's all part of nature, of our nature, of our defences, of our offences, of our sort of kind of stability, of our base, whatever. But if you have a look at every single thing, so therefore in that, when it comes to criminology, I think later on as we discover more and more about our genome makeup, I think this will have to very much be taken into account, because I think that there's people that are less in control simply genetically.
Wouldn't you not think, if you took a child, a young person, and you put them into an environment that was violent, where there was abuse in the family, physical and others, and sexual, do you not think that person is more likely to grow up as a violent person rather than another person of the same age who will be growing up in a peaceful and on the face of it a very level a peaceful and you understand what I mean, a peaceful environment?
Well, you'll find that probably
stable is the word I was looking for.
You'll probably find that the one that's brought up in a kind of unstable, violent environment will follow his nature, and will sort of, in other words, will be guided simply by his nature.
So not nurture, then?
I don't think so. I think that's where I think that most of the arguments come back to. It's the parents, it's this, it's that. I think that, in my opinion, we're only in control of 10% of our emotions, of our actions, and all the rest is really punishment, training, or coercion. But I think within that perimeters, there's also a section that no amount of controls or training or nurture, as you put it, will ever alter that. And I think that's where sort of the law really goes wrong, because our political system is totally catering for our bad side, in other words, our nature side.
Our political system? What do you mean?
Well, all capitalism and competitive systems cater for that, cater for all the wrong things, the kind of the nature side, but not the human side that we're supposed to be fighting, the nature side. And therefore that you'll find that no matter how good a person is, given within that sphere of influence, their nature will come out. That's why, for instance, in Russia, that he had a really good system before. I mean, I know you can dispute that, but you did have a system where it's supposed to be of equality, although it wasn't. Now that's broken down and it's gone into competition and capitalism, you'll find that the worst side of people come out, just as in a war.
But unfortunately, Roger, we are put on this planet, but however way we got here, we have been put here, and we are competitive. It is within the nature of the beast. That's why we are the superior. That's why we are a superior breed.
Yeah, but isn't it that we're given that ideology, and that caters for our nature.
No, I don't think so.
Side of the human
I don't think so. I think this is where we go back to the nature-nurture business. I don't think we suddenly become competitive. I think yes, of course it is exacerbated, but I think it's there naturally. The moment we arrive, and maybe before that, we are competitive.
Well, let's put this abusers. For instance, most of abusers have had an history of being abused.
Yes, that's right.
So therefore, they're following their nature.
Yeah, I'd accept that.
So it's not really nurture.
No, that's why it always puzzled me, and I'm inclined to agree with you. I think it is. I don't think people are born evil or violent or bad. I think that is the nurture side, the product of the environment.
So
yeah.
This is really counter to religion, isn't it? Because if it boils down to simply our genetic makeup, everything's really been already like a book written for us. The 10% of control that we have over things is therefore abused by whatever political ideology there is at the present.
I'm not sure the ideology comes into it. I really don't. I think it's far more basic than that.
Well, let's put it in if you had a different ideology, you'd probably find that people would follow their nature, but in a different way. So therefore it does play a great deal. For instance, we talk about crime and parental control and this and that, and yet we're in a very competitive kind of political ideology that tells us that the only way to get ahead is to do somebody else in.
No, I don't think so. I think that's a very bleak picture. I think you can be competitive without actually running roughshod coach and horses over everybody.
You won't find anybody, for instance, very few bosses that'll pay their workers the same wages as they're getting.
Well, no, that's quite right. That's quite just as well.
No,
because you will find, in the main, you will find that people who run businesses or maybe started businesses from the bricks up have put in 18, 19, 20 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, but
and they work blooming hard. Now, why should they take the same amount of money if somebody turns up 8 hours a day, probably not particularly interested in the job, 5 days a week, and then retires at 60 or 65, whereas this other person will probably work right through until they pop their clogs.
But this is where my point is, that I agree with you that this is what happens, but if it was nurture and you was taught to sort of share and treat people equally, you wouldn't, for instance, put that as your first consideration, your own nature, that you've sort of perhaps put in or took a risk or whatever, and therefore somebody else should work for cheaper. You should sort of really be following your nurture. But as you can see, the worst part of you, the animal side, the genetic side, the make-up side says no.
Well,
I don't want to share. I want to have more because I took a little bit of a risk. Just as an animal, when it makes a kill, it won't share unless it's part of.
Well, no, I think if you're running, if you're talking,
like
hang on, Roger. If you're running a business and if you don't share in the good times and the fortune, I'm not necessarily saying it has to be an equal share, but if you don't share with the people that you're working with, you won't be in business very long. I mean, you're trying to draw the analogy of a lion holding on to its bit of food and not sharing it with the next. Pride or the gazelle or the not sharing the gazelle with the tiger or anything like that.
But
that is different.
You'll find that even in animal families, that unless the predisposition for the animal to share with, say, a younger one, he won't. So therefore, what you find is that the system caters for, if it was nurture, your first consideration would be for somebody else, as you've been nurtured to take care of other people.
But we're nurtured also, Roger. I'm going to have to move on now. So a lot of calls coming. We're also nurtured to be competitive. Surely, that's the thing. That's the point. We are. It is the product of the environment that makes us competitive, or is it? Maybe it's at birth. Maybe before birth. Maybe we are. Maybe we do become competitive. We fight to get out of the womb. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe it is. Your thoughts are more than welcome. As always, Roger will kick an anthill over, and he's done it again. Good on you.